It.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Fanatic. The Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Jeffrey Haskell. Jeffrey, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. My audience knows I'm coaching right now, so I can't talk to save my life, especially this spring between all the jobs I've had. But I'll try and do better with the rest of these questions. For that first question, what has your writing journey been like up until this point?
It's been really awesome. Like a lot of writers, and I've been on other podcasts, they ask you questions, like what made you a writer and things like that. But I like the writing journey aspect of it because it is a journey. It takes a long time to get anywhere. And like all journeys, it's the journey that makes you, it's not the destination. I feel like if I had become an overnight success, when I first started writing, that would have made me a weaker writer than I am now. So it's been pretty cool. I spent 27 or 28 novels written, and I'm about to publish 23. I've got a brand new book coming out next month, military sci-fi, my very first, for Athon Books, and I'm really excited about that. It's called Against All Odds, Grimm's War, Book 1. And so yeah, it's a culmination, right? So there's this whole journey I've been on. First, it was I want to make money as a writer, and then it was I want to make a lot of money as a writer, and then it was no, I want to be a good writer, and then it was no, I want to be remembered, and now it's a combination of I want people to love my books, and I want to keep doing this for the rest of my life, and the only way to do that is to become a really great writer. So that's the journey.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Yeah, I did, like I said before we started recording, I mentioned you, I think it was my Seal Per Low episode that just went up where I was talking about, the episode of Lindsay Broker's podcast that I heard you on. I loved what you were saying on there. That one in particular, you were kind of talking about ghostwriting and, doing a couple of things and then really trying to get in, on your own brand for the Arsenal series. So yeah, it's been great to see, go back and see, how many books you've written, in terms of Arsenal series and things like that. And Wraith and those different things, but it's cool to hear
really
that you're
cool.
doing military sci-fi.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually started wanting to write military sci-fi.
I remember you saying that. Yeah,
I'm a vet, and I grew up reading military thrillers like Tom Clancy, stuff like that, plus Honor Harrington and Starship Troopers, and and I wanted to write military sci-fi my whole life. I planned a bunch of worlds and done lots of world building and created fake technologies in my head, but when I sat down to start writing for reals, so to speak, I realized I wasn't very good. And so I had to get better. And then when I started making money ghostwriting, that's when my wife said, like, well, obviously the guy's making money, why aren't you just doing this yourself? And so I wrote for Lindsay Broker. I wrote in her Star something universe. It's been a while. And I wrote like a 3-part novella, 3 novellas in her universe back when Kindle Worlds was a thing. And then I wrote for Jay Allen. And so I was just kind of writing all over the place. And I really intended to jump into military sci-fi. But the year I was thinking about getting in was kind of a big deal in the author community because military sci-fi kind of exploded. And you have people like Chris Fox and Michael Anderle all dominating the space. And I was just like, well, I'm not. No. So I love superheroes, and I had already written 2 superhero books at that point, not published, but I'd written them, and I was like, you know what? I keep trying to find a superhero book to read, and I can't because 99% of them aren't what I want out of a superhero novel. And so I was like, I'm just going to do superheroes, and then one day I'll be good enough, and And so in 2019, in November of 2019, I went to Athon Books and told them about this mil sci-fi idea I had. And they asked me how quick I could write it. And I was like, 6 months, easy, right? How hard could it be? That was November of 2019, So here my happy little bottom is finishing the last Arsenal book in January of 2020 and hearing some rumblings about something happening, And so my 6-month project turned into 2.5 years.
Yep.
So all 3 books are done for my mil sci-fi series, Grimm's War. And Athon's published them starting April 19th. And then, April, May, June, one after the other. And the covers are just unbelievable, mind-blowingly good. And they're done by Vivid Covers. And it's full disclosure, Vivid Covers is run by my wife. But
Oh, I
she
forgot she
also,
did covers. That's
yeah,
awesome.
she's done
Totally
all my
forgot that.
covers.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
My deal with Athon is that I would only do it if she got to do the covers. And
Oh,
then
that's
she
cool.
said, unless Tom Edwards could do the covers. So, but they're like, no, we're happy to have her do it. And then they ended up just getting a lot of covers from her because she's just really, really darn good. And so COVID kind of, the whole COVID thing really, screwed everybody up. So I'm
Yeah.
not nothing special there. So 2 books in 2 years as opposed to 6 books a year for 3 years is what I was doing. And then a book last year and a book this year. But that should all come around here. Things are getting back to normal. So
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
books here this year and another 3 at the end of the year probably. And I'm working on the 6th or 8th novel right now called Circle of Fire.
Oh, cool.
I like to tell people it's contractually obligated, but no, I love writing. I love writing Wraith. Tantor Media signed a deal. I signed a deal with Tantor Media to do 6 books, so
Okay.
I have to do the 6th one.
Yeah.
Not that I wasn't going to do the 6th one, but I before I do anything else, I have to get that one done. And it's pretty cool. She's Wraith's my vigilante. Where Arsenal's
Yeah.
my high tech superhero. Wraith is my more down the dirt vigilante. So I've had her fight a lot of different people, the Russian mafia, the South American gangs, human traffickers. She went up against some Eastern European guys, and so this time around she's going up against the Yakuza. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, they made them. They don't know who she is, and so they come into Louisiana looking to expand their operations, and they get a rude awakening.
Oh, that's
It's kind of cool. I'm doing something a little different this time. She's always been a one-man band, so to speak. While she has friends who help her, she's never really formed connections on the street. And so I was trying to think about what would happen to a city if for 3 years there was a vigilante in that city, and if you committed this crime, she would find you and kill you. That crime would stop happening.
Yeah.
Right? It would stop happening. And so what's happened is what I decided is all the gangs in Louisiana have stopped human trafficking. Just stopped it. They want anything to do with it because they know she'll come in and kill them all. And so it's kind of left her, hungry.
Yeah.
Little demon inside of her doesn't have anybody to kill, and she refuses to go start killing, street crime and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So the gangs are actually trying to help her in this one fight the Yakuza, because the Yakuza,
cool.
if you look at the history of their organization, they're actually a semi-legit organization in Japan.
Yeah. I was just talking about that. That's funny.
Yeah. And hey Julia, can you let the dog out? And so it's so funny is they had when their tsunami hit, they mobilized before the government did, providing places to live and water and stuff like that. And I do my research. I've never been to Japan, and I don't claim any Japanese heritage, but I do my research. And but what they're actually made up of people who are not Japanese for the most part. Their current Oiban is South Korean.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I think Yakuza is Japanese for outsider. I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's hard to get an accurate translation on anything coming out of the East because but a lot of people don't like their language being translated into English. And plus also there's a lot of nuance in their language. I don't pretend to be an expert. I just, have done some research. And so what they'll do is they'll move into an area and they'll cannibalize all the other criminal organizations, absorb them into the Yakuza. And if you don't go in, they kill you. So there's a Vietnamese gang in the real world called the Snake. And it's, their version of the Yakuza. And they're fiercely independent. And Japanese Yakuza hates the Vietnamese people, hates them. And so that's who's helping her in this book, is the Vietnamese gang. And so it's she's in this conundrum of well, I want to kill all these people, but there's worse people to kill. And, so yeah, it's interesting. It's fun. It's just interesting and fun. It's slow going. because after 350,000 words in third person with multiple POVs spanning over 5 years and huge epic military sci-fi, all of a sudden I'm back in Madison's head. And so I watched John Wick, and I watched Peppermint, and I watched Equalizer. I watched all these movies to get my head into that game. I watched a couple episodes of Punisher, just to kind of get back into that, kill or be killed kind of mentality. Because my hero from Grimm's War is this very thoughtful, soft-spoken ship's commander who is not a man of action, so to speak. You know what I mean? He's a tactician. He's a strategist. The first time he's in a gunfight on the, in the real world, he trips and falls and breaks his nose. You know what I mean? He is not Captain Kirk in the sense of he can do everything, but he can command the hell out of a ship, So it's Marines are for the fighting. That's what the Marines are for.
Yeah.
And anyway, so going from him to her is like, it's really hard. It's like going back and forth between Amelia and Madison. Arsenal and Wraith was almost easier than this, because they're both first person.
Yeah.
But once you write third person, it's just really hard to get yourself back in that mindset of first person for me.
Oh no, totally.
Back in the mindset for first person. Anything I say, by the way, in case anybody's wondering, anything I say applies to me and me alone. I'm not like saying this is how it is for everybody. So I have to use that disclaimer, because first comment will be like, well, I find it really easy to switch from third person to first person.
I would love if anybody does find that very easy to let me know, like email me or, let me know in the comments, because I personally, I've tried it, and I'm starting to find that, like, I feel like I'm not a very good third person, like writer, and I just don't think that's my POV. So as soon as I was like, oh, I think I'm going to try, first person, some of my writing friends were like, no, don't do it. And I'm like, I don't know. I said, it just seems like, it flows better. It sounds better. I said, I think I'm going to go, just kind of do third person as an outline and kind of go from there. But yeah, it's hard to switch back and forth.
Yeah. And it depends on the genre too. Certain genres require certain things. Military sci-fi is kind of neat in that you can do both. Famously, Starship Troopers is first person. Sorry, my mouth's a little dry. Famously, Starship Troopers is first person. Say that fast 5 times. And but I'm going more for a Seawolf. I don't know if you remember that old TV show Seawolf.
Yeah.
Or down Periscope kind of thing. In space.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the ship is important. The ship's a character. Everybody, the people, the crew on the ship, them by name. The setting is the ship. It's not space. It's not these other planets or this conflict. The setting is the ship. So the ship is as important as the Enterprise is in Star Trek. Which, if you ask me, every time a Star Trek TV show goes wrong, it's because it's not about the Enterprise. But
that's fair.
So third person, the biggest difference for me for third person is one, there's actually a lot of first person elements in third person, because you can do third person close, which is on what almost everybody does who does third person. Nobody does the omniscient anymore, which is the omniscient narrator. But I kind of switch back and forth a little bit. I usually open my paragraphs omniscient. Open my chapters omniscient.
Okay.
Because it's like, if I stay third person close, then you would never know what the other ships are doing, or you fire a weapon and he watches the blip on the screen. No. I jump into the weapon, and you get to experience that. But there's also this thing called, my wife knows the name of the technique, but it's when your POV dips so close to the character for a moment, the narrative and the character's thoughts are the same. It's not the highlighting the character's thoughts in italics. It's not that. It's that the narrative and the thoughts become the same. And if you're very careful with how you present your POV and how you present your world, and you are clear when you are in that space, then nobody has a problem with it. Like I'll have like chapters where for one paragraph in the chapter, it switches to somebody else's POV. And you get people like, oh, that's head hopping. That's not what head hopping is. But it's very clear that POV has shifted. And for that moment, you needed that reaction from that character to make you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So what you'll probably find is you're writing, and you may not, you may be perfectly happy with first person for the rest of your life. And this is not a knock against first person, because I have like 15 books in first person. I love writing first person. So I do both. It's easier. It just is. It's easier because what you're saying and doing is presenting yourself in a book. And sure, Amelia is not me, obviously. She's, you know, smarter and prettier than I am. And same thing with Madison. But there are aspects of me, like I was in the military, you know, I've watched all these, you know, movies, I've read all these Mac Bolan books back when I was a kid. And so I can be like, okay, I can put my mind in that place of Madison, of that killer, right? And I can write her as if it was me. Same thing with Amelia. But when you're doing third person, you have to be much more thoughtful about your narrative and what you're writing, and about how every sentence, you know, is telling you something about that character or the story. And the biggest reason to do third person is to do different POVs, you know, and you might find once you've written enough that you're starting to want to tell the story from a different angle, you know, even if it's just for a minute. And I do that with the Wraith books. I don't know how far in the series you've gotten, but I started doing that with the Wraith books, where I would, like, there are chapters that are first person, that's Madison, and third person one is the bad guys, because it became important that the reader got to see under the hood of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of difficult to go back to just first person with no other POVs at all, because there's so much information that you can put out there when you're doing third person. So that's my big thing. I'm hopefully planning on doing 3 more superhero novels in the superhero universe.
Oh, cool.
In the Amelia-verse with Amelia, like a whole new series.
Oh, that's cool.
Most likely in third person.
Oh,
just
okay.
because I want to explore that idea and see how it works.
Yeah.
Again, I really love Amelia's my first love, so to speak, and you know, she's a great character, and I learned a lot writing her. I learned so much writing her and so much writing Wraith. I think with Wraith, the thing that I nailed the most was how to open a book, and I will forever be thankful for my Wraith novels for that, because every time I write a book, I kind of pick something and I'm like, okay, what am I going to master this time? You know, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
My dog is whining. Yeah, I try to pick something that I know I'm not good at and try to make it better. So with Wraith, it was, I wanted the openers to be I wanted them to pull you in and just get you. And I got this friend, CC Keke, who writes Pantheon Saga, superhero novels.
Yeah.
Charles is awesome dude.
I just got the first 2, I think. I think I got the first 2 or first 3 on my Kindle. I'm like, I have those 3, and then your first 3, and I think I grabbed the first Wraith book, which I'm excited about. I think it was like the other day. I had like a gift card, and I was like, yes, please.
Yeah.
I think he popped up with one of my other friends, so I just was like, yeah, there was some sort of deal going on, so I was like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, and if you ever want to have him on the show, he's a fantastic speaker. I mean, he's like me. He's an extrovert, and he loves talking, especially about superheroes. He's the only guy I've met who knows more about comic book superheroes than I do.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so me and him got together. We started talking about like the different superhero stuff, and he told me it's rare when authors read your work, right? It's kind of rare when other authors read your work, because we're all busy. We're working authors. Yeah. I try to take readcations, you know, between books, so I can try to read outside my genre so that I can get some perspective. You know, the last thing you want to do is keep, like, you know, drilling down to the point where you only have one kind of idea.
Yeah.
You need to broaden. You need to constantly be forcing yourself to broaden your horizons. Otherwise, you just become derivative of yourself. One of my biggest fears is I'm going to write a book and someone's gonna be like, well, this is just like book 6 in this series you wrote, you know. And I've seen reviews like that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that. And anyway, so and he told me, we met at a con, and he told me he was writing a superhero novel, and he asked if I could read it for him and tell me what he thought. And I thought, well, yeah, that's fantastic. At the time, I was probably the best-selling superhero author at the time. And that's 2018, 2019. I read it. I really liked it. I told him 2 things. I said, one, we had a very similar life, despite our outward appearances differences. He's African American and I'm not, but we had very similar life experiences because his characters were all instantly recognizable to me. And and two, I told him, I was like, it's too much swearing for me, but I think you'll have an audience, and he's like, you know what, I think I'll tone down the swearing. So he did. Still a lot of swearing, but it's not nearly as much as there was. I kind of shoot for more of the I don't want to say YA audience because it doesn't really fit YA, but all ages. All ages
I
is a better, is a better description. Because there's violence and there's death and there's consequences and things happen, and there are ideas that are beyond what teenagers can generally conceptualize. But I like the all ages, so I try to minimize swearing in my books, and there's no sex and stuff like that. And that also,
that. I don't want my kids reading my books be like, oh my god, like...
yeah, right. And that's also in line with my religious beliefs too. So that it's it works out. I don't have to feel bad about writing the books that I write. I know some people who write those books, and they have to use a pen name and everything because they don't want anybody to know that they've written them. And I'm like, well, if you don't want people to know that you've written them, maybe you shouldn't be writing them.
Yeah. Well, I was like the Dragonlance or the Forgotten Realms because my mom made a good point. I was talking about it today because I was like, a kid asked me and I said, well, and the parent asked me, they're like, well, when you publish your book, is it going to be something my kid could read? I said, well, it's going to be a lot more chill than The Walking Dead. I got to tell you that, and my mom was like, well, it's kind of like Blue Bloods. And I love that show. And there's no sex, there's really no swearing, like very little, and it's just great actors, great writing. It's always a great story, and I think they're on like season 14, and I literally can't watch that show because I will watch an entire season and then watch another season. I'll never get any writing done. And I was like, no, that's what I want though, in terms of books. And I'm like, I don't think you need certain things to to sell a book, particularly if you're writing a good book or good characters. So
yeah, no, but I mean, not that any of that's just a shortcut. That's all style and opinion. I just I do it without, and it was, I had to be very creative with my military sci-fi because of certain expectations people have with military books. I mean, you may have heard that people in the military swear a lot.
I know many of them.
And but so when I was in the Army in the 90s, there was a rule came down that we weren't allowed to swear in uniform.
Oh,
and it didn't last for very long. It lasted like 3 years, I think. Officers weren't allowed to swear around non-coms. Non-coms weren't allowed to swear around privates. And then you could smoke or chew or drink in uniform. They're trying to clean up the image of the Army from the 80s, And that's sort of what I based it on in my books.
That's interesting.
The Navy doesn't allow swearing in uniform, and so there's kind of a running joke. I think at one point he says, damn. And it's like, you guys better not report me. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, and there's I tried to capture the wonder of space travel and the wonder of discovery. We've become so rote and desensitized to things in movies and TV shows and in books, because many authors write books like as if they are movies and TV shows. And so we've lost a lot of that feeling of discovery. That is really important to writing science fiction, in my opinion. But I have wandered off the topic a lot.
Yeah, so much great stuff there. I actually have quite a few notes, so I'm glad that you wandered. I'm always encouraging wandering and meandering because I always get a lot of good stuff out of it. So you gave me a lot to think about. So
I love talking about writing and talking about craft. I mean, my wife and I have been trying to figure out how to do a podcast about craft. Indies don't like to talk about craft, and it's like Bruno, they don't talk about it. And so they love talking about business, and I don't. The business side of it isn't interesting to me. It's the creation side of it that's interesting to me. And once I figured out how to sell books without having to spend money on marketing, I was like, I'm tuning you guys out now. You can go keep spending your millions of dollars a year on marketing, and I'm just going to keep selling books because I don't need to make millions of dollars a year. I need to make $80,000 a year. And and you can do that without marketing. Is it easier? I don't know. It requires singular focus and precision and purpose, and you have to be driven to do it. And so I love craft. And my wife and I are always talking about it because she's a writer too, and we're always breaking things down. Why did this story work? Why did that story work? How come this one didn't work? We read craft books and stuff like that. It's pretty awesome.
Well, that's one reason why I started this podcast, because I call it a journeyman's podcast. I said, if you want a basic whatever, I'm like, this isn't for you. I'm like, this is for people like myself who have written several books and are trying to, finish them in an appropriate manner where people really enjoy them, and then start the next book in that trilogy, something like that. I talk a little bit about advertising things here and there just to get some people interested, but it's really all about craft for me. And yeah, sales are great, but at the same time, I think if you are, you're really perfecting your craft and you're doing a good job at that, the sales come, in my opinion. Like that's
Eventually.
what I talk a lot. Yeah, eventually.
I mean, everybody wants to be an overnight success.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Rick Partlow, who writes military sci-fi, and he wrote this book series called Drop Trooper. Huge success. Started 2 years ago. Huge success. I really liked it. And he was an overnight success. 12 years in the making. He'd been writing and publishing books since 2010.
Oh, wow.
So, it's just like everybody wants to be an overnight success, but being an overnight success doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you some money.
Yeah.
But I can't think of a single overnight success in the last 10 years that is still around writing books and publishing books. Because what happens when you're successful is that you tend to freeze your learning process.
Yeah.
Because you were successful for a reason, right? I mean, look at Stephen King's books, right? Best-selling author in the world. His books from the 1970s and his books now are virtually craft identical.
Yeah.
Because you sold 10,000 books in one day. Obviously, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Why would you change? And so I've tried really hard to not fall into that trap, to be constantly evolving, constantly learning. And one of the things that I really learned that really, really helps you, if you want a reader to be really invested in your book, to be really invested in your story.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to do this post your first draft, but is you concoct a theme by which everybody has an arc that follows that theme. And so I'm going to use Moana as an example. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to use Moana as an example. There's a song in Moana about who I am.
Yeah.
She's the chief, the daughter of the chief. So Moana's theme is, who am I? Maui's theme is, who am I? Te Fiti's theme is, who am I?
Yeah.
Right? Even the crab's theme is, who am I? You know what I mean? So they wove the theme into every single character in that movie. And so when you get the end, you get that punch at the end, that emotional punch at the end is amazing. And I know it's a kids movie, but oftentimes you can see themes in kids movies a lot easier than you can in adult movies because they're not trying to hide it.
Yeah.
They're not trying to be clever with their craft or anything like that. So you get that theme, and for me, for my first Against All Odds books, it's a duty in the face of danger. You know what I mean? Like doing your duty no matter what.
Oh, that's cool. And
then in the second one, which is called With Grim Resolve,
that's a cool title.
The main character's name is Jacob Grimm.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Jacob T. Grimm. And so in the second one, the theme is leave no one behind. Right. And so in the bad guys in the second one they have a counter theme, right? So you got this theme of leave no one behind, right? Because I'm not trying to build this dark, no pun intended, grim universe. I'm trying to build. One of my friends who was in the military read the book, and he's like, that was the kind of officer I wanted to be when I was in. That was the kind of unit I wanted to serve with. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for aspirational. I'm going for hopeful, right?
Yeah.
You want to read about how awful evil soldiers and sailors are? There are plenty of books to do that. Yeah. I don't shy away from the horrors of war, but I try to show the best in everybody, except for the bad guys, of course, because then they would be the bad guys.
Yeah.
But so the bad guys theme is people are expendable. And so there's a counter theme, right? So you really see the difference. You got this one theme going this way and this one theme going that way. And as the two are compared, you see the difference in how they behave based on their theme. And, and then you have like your personal motivations, and you have, everything that every character should have. But the theme is sort of like ties it all together. And, I'm sure you've heard about theme before, and people talk about theme all the time. But being an author is a lot like playing D&D. you get levels, right?
Yeah,
And when you're level 8, you don't know what it's like to be level 20. And every once in a while, I don't know if you've experienced this, that I'll be writing and I'll be trying to figure out how to do something, and it'll just,
oh yeah.
I'll be like, oh hey, I might as well be playing World of Warcraft and heard that little ding sound. I just leveled up. I figured out how to do this. And then you go back and you read your first stuff and you're like, oh man.
Yep.
So the theme really, like a good strong theme, and it has to be simple, right? A complex theme. It's why a lot of movies and books fail, because they're trying to like, weave some complicated theme
Yeah.
that isn't universal, that nobody can really identify with, except for the person who wrote it, right?
Yeah.
So courage above all else is a theme. You know what I mean? Don't abandon your friends. That's a theme. Not shopping on Sundays because your aunt doesn't like it is not a theme. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to articulate it in one sentence, and it has to have an emotional punch. In the third book, that the theme is people are more important than profits. And boom. And that guides everything in the book.
Yeah.
So you nail that theme, and you nail it. In my opinion, if you're good enough to write a story, like a coherent story with beginning and middle and end, with trials and tribulations, and surprises and turning points and things like that. If you can do all the form stuff, right, and then you add that theme, you go from good to great. And that's when the magic happens, or at least this is what I hope. We'll find out in a month.
I'll be hoping with you. It's funny that you,
I'll my bomb. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just funny that you brought up theme, because and you said a couple things there that I totally agree with. Like, so I have this zombies versus the Ninth Roman Legion, and that's why they end up being lost to history.
Okay, give me the book. I'm sold.
Right? So, but my thing, so the hardest, it's just funny that you said this, and you're like, it's like serendipity. So it just keeps happening to me, interview after interview lately. I don't know if it's like minds or what. I understand, like, people always think and talk about crap, but it's creepy almost with how many people have mentioned what I just had happen this week. And I was looking at my outline, and I was like, you know what? I said, I'm trying to do too much with theme with the first draft, because I want exactly what you just said. Like, I want people such as yourself, who are veterans, to be like, and I'm going to give it to somebody and have some people help me who are veterans and, have experienced those things. And I want there to be a key, like, D&D group of Roman soldiers who are just trying to help each other survive this crazy scenario. And it's like, but I was like, well, the real thing is, I want you to care. I want you to care about them because they care about each other. But I realized that I was putting too much of the relationships in before getting the rest of the story done. And I was like, well, I got to get this done so that then I can put those things in to make, to really, kind of fluff up the theme. It's not fluff, but strengthen it more. And I was like, I'm just doing too much at once. So it was an interesting craft moment, because I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I just need to do this. And then once I, get the first draft done, I was like, I can then go through and make sure that theme is, more present without, and make sure that people actually care about these characters and not like, oh, fine, whatever. But
a lot of times it only takes 1 or 2 sentences to strengthen the theme. You know what I mean? Like when I figured this out, what I'm telling you about was when I was on like a 4th draft of Against All Odds, and I was just like, there was something missing. You know what I mean? Like, the story was there, the characters were there. I knew the characters were likable, and I knew people would sympathize with them, because everybody can sympathize with people down on their luck. It's one of those universal sufferings that everybody goes through. That's another thing too, is like, if you want to appeal to an audience that is big enough for you to make money off of your books, you can't appeal to niche ideas. You know what I mean? Like, you got to appeal to broad universal ideas that everybody on the planet can attune with. Being treated unfairly at work, who hasn't, right? So not being believed because you're a kid, there's a billion of them. And so when I was working on the first draft, I had everything there. The story was there, the characters were there, but it was missing heart, right? It was missing its theme. And so when I discussed it with my wife, who has all my great ideas, I realized what it was. And I have a character who is, mistreated at work. Basically, he's blamed for something he didn't do, and then he's basically forced out of the Navy almost, and then he's given one last chance to turn things around. And the question that was haunting me was, why Why does he want to turn things around? Why does he want to stay in the Navy? Because he likes being a sailor, spacer, as I call them. That's not good enough reason, right? It's just not good enough reason. You got superpowers. Why are you a superhero? Because I have superpowers? No, you got to have a reason, right? And so I came up with a really great reason. And it was his mother was a war hero in the last war, and she died, gotten this big medal. And he was worried that every time someone looked up their family, it would just be this big black mark next to his name. And it wouldn't be, she wouldn't get the remembrance and the respect that she deserved.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't go out like that. And all of and you know how I changed that? I put in 2 lines, 100,000 word novel, 2 lines. And all of a sudden the entire book is about him trying to clear his name and remove the stain of honor from his mother's name. You know what I mean? And like my editor was like, "What did you rewrite the whole book or something?" I'm like, "Nope, I had to."
That's awesome.
Yeah. But you're right. What you said about you got to have people care about the characters before you show the relationships. You're 100% right.
I like that theme though of legacy. I feel like, I don't know if it's because, like community or where I came from, but we always like, I'm a Midwesterner, I'm from Michigan, and like where I went to school and stuff, like our community, like we talk, like that's all was hammered into us was legacy. And, that's how I've lived my entire adult life. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, and, I conduct myself in a manner inside and outside of my job where, I feel like students and my community could look to and be like, yeah, there's somebody who, who understands legacy, and understands, like how somebody should conduct themselves in these positions. And, I've had people my entire life who have been like that for me, who I could look up to and know that they would not let me down. And so I like that. Just the theme of
Legacy is a great theme.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And one of the best ways to get people to care about a character, in my opinion, is to give them something that they really care about, the character cares about, and then take it away from them. And so, have you read book 1 of the Wraith, or have you just read the blurb?
I read all your blurbs.
Okay.
I added them all to Goodreads. I actually like to talk to people first, particularly about craft, and then I like to go through and use it as a book study. So
yeah, read the first chapter of Wraith, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I do it in there. I give her something to care about, and then I take it away from them. And once you do that, people are on board with the character, and then you got time to do all the other fancy stuff of world building and character building and things like that. But the trick is, right, the real trick, like Han Solo said, is getting people to care about the character. How do you start the page? And as authors, we like to throw around a lot of like craft words, like in media res, which means in the action. But action doesn't mean violence. Action means tension. Action means stakes. What are the stakes when you open your novel? Opening your novel with high stakes will bring the reader on board almost immediately. So and a lot of people do that with action, like, oh, and he fell out of the car. Will he live? Will he not live? Or I've seen some people do it with conversation really well, but it has to be really well. If you're going to do it with conversation, you have to very quickly, someone has to realize that these two people having a conversation are about to kill each other. That would be one way to do it. And then they'd be waiting the whole conversation for the first person to make the move. And that would be automatic tension. Or, you could do it in the aftermath of a battle, open a scene in the aftermath of a battle, and someone is desperately trying to save somebody else, and we will be on board. I say we, the audience, will be on board with this character because we too want to save that person, because it's a natural inclination to want to save someone's life. So there's lots of ways to start a book to make people care about characters. And the more common ways you see are the ways you want to avoid, because the more common they are, the more cliche they become. And cliche can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes you want things to be cliche. There's cliches for a reason, right? And in for a penny, in for a pound, that's a cliche, but the cliche everybody knows. And you can use that for shorthand to mean that you're all in. And then there's bad cliches, right? So are you a fan of Star Trek or Stargate and stuff like that? Okay.
All of
the
them.
Worf effect, right? The Worf effect.
Mm.
Worf's this BA Klingon
Yep.
on the Enterprise, and every time they want to show somebody how tough somebody is, they have him beat up Worf.
Yep. Every
Same
time.
thing with Teal'c, and it's super annoying. So those are the kind of cliches you want to avoid. But obviously, you always want to be coming from a place of knowledge when you're doing stuff. So yeah, so try to open a book in a way that's memorable, that builds tension immediately. It does not have to be violence. It just has to be action, and action means tension.
Got my mind whirling now. I actually never considered that. So
Well, I'm super stoked about the Legion versus Zombies thing, because that sounds amazing. I want to read it when it comes out.
yes, I'm a history teacher, and
Oh,
I love historical mysteries, and I study military history. Like, my really, I don't know, pretty much since I could read. My grandfather, he was a World War II veteran, both of them, and I didn't get to meet the one. So the other one, like, we talked a lot, and I spent like every weekend with them because my parents were working like 75, 85 hours a week with 2 jobs and stuff. And, like, we would watch war movies because that was his thing. We'd watch John Wayne movies. We'd watch, he got me
Johnny
into
Murphy.
science fiction, fantasy. Yeah, like cop dramas, like I think he would take me. I'm very thankful for him because he would take me to a movie like every week. I mean, I went to see so many great Disney movies, Call of the Wild, or what is it now? I totally blank on what it's called. But it was like there were like the 2 wolves or whatever. There was like 2 of them. But yeah, it was super good. But yeah, there was just so many great. I think back and I'm like the 90s was great, like 80s and 90s because we had so many great movies. Even kids movies were like almost like young adult. 3 Ninjas was great. And he took me in. It was always about a story though. Like everything him and I did was always about a story. And if it was a toy, maybe not. But if it was a book, like he would buy it for me or my grandma would, and then we'd read it together. And particularly my parents went on long trips for their second like night job and stuff. Like that was a big thing for the weekends. And to me, it's just like he just helped raise me, and so did my grandma, and like they were both big into reading, and I was very lucky with that. But I just he was big into history, and Roman history was one of the first things that I remember he was teaching me. And I thought, how cool is, speaking of legacy, I'm like, how cool would that be to to write this book about the Roman Legion. And that was one of the first mysteries of history that I can remember ever hearing about. And the more I thought about it, I was like, why do we not know where they're from? There was a paper that came out 2 years ago that said that it was a clerical error, but then another paper came out last year, right after, like, once everything was open again, and they were like, no, we don't think that's true. And I just kept thinking about it, and I'm like, you're talking about, I don't think people really realize like how crazy it was. And like you have the most skilled like Navy SEAL like Legion, like top 2 of all time of Rome, and then they almost get destroyed by Boudica, like Queen Boudica, and then they're still there like almost like 40 years later. And you got to figure they're even more battle hardened because they have to deal with the Caledonians and all these other people, and all of a sudden they just disappear. And nobody's ever found anything of them, like nothing, no bodies, no weapons, no metal, like no anything, no emblems, shields, remnants, nothing. And it made me wonder. And I was like, well, the easiest thing I think would be zombies, because zombies would just eat all their flesh and stuff. And but yeah, I kind of want to turn them into like
you can't
the
have them
survivors.
lose.
Oh, no, I want the there's going to be survivors. I mean, spoiler, you'll know that by the back of the book. But like not a lot. Like you got an entire legion, there's a couple, but like book 2, I kind of want them to try to travel back to Rome and then get caught like somewhere with, I think, like werewolves, and then somewhere else I'd love them to get back to Rome and then have to face vampires within the court, and have to do like this political thriller thing. And if people like the 3, I might keep going and make it a series. But I just thought, I like the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I love Chronicles of the Black Company, by Glenn Cook, and I love that camaraderie. You know what I mean? I love that
Yeah,
camaraderie.
the whole reason people read military books is
Yeah,
that camaraderie. Yeah,
yeah, and I'm a
they
martial
want to be a
artist,
part of
and
that unit. Yeah,
yeah, and I
yeah.
have people that I've literally like been on tournament teams with and stuff. You would die for those people, and like I get that, and I'm like I want other people to be like yeah I have a friend like that, and like another theme, friendship. But yeah, I just think it'd be really fun, and I love urban fantasy, but I love historical urban fantasy, so I just thought it sounds fun. But
No, you're singing to the choir here, buddy. I love history. I had a history professor who was desperately trying to make me a history teacher.
oh, that's great.
But I wanted to be a writer more than
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
be a history teacher. but I love history. I read historical books all the time. I reference them in my writing.
Oh, that's awesome.
A great influence on these books is World War II,
Oh,
and
cool.
not just like the way things happen, but the politics involved, the geopolitical situation of the world. You won't probably see that, but my idea was basically is what if the US and the Allies lost World War One?
Ooh, that's a
How
good
would
one.
that set up the world for World War II? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because World War II would still happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the forces were kind of inevitable.
yeah.
And so, but it just happened for different reasons. And so, yeah, so it's sort of how I set up the galaxy in this point. And so, I mean, I'm sure you being a historian, if you read it, you're like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing here. This is based on this thing that happened.
Yeah,
And
I love
one of the things that
that.
always bothers me about historians is they're always trying to disprove the amazing.
Mm.
You
Oh
know,
yeah, I get that.
Horatius on the bridge didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of thing. And I always say this: well, there was a guy who landed a plane on the Potomac a couple of years ago, and nobody died, and that shouldn't have happened. That
Yeah.
should be impossible. Nobody else was able to do that. So if that could happen, then anything can happen. And
Yeah.
Audie Murphy said in his biography that when he was filming The Hell and Back, which is his drama, I'm sure you've seen it, The Hell and
Yeah,
Back.
yeah.
Yeah, story about him in World War II. He said that the network wouldn't let him put in the most crazy, some of the things that he did because they said it was too unbelievable. So there were things that happened in the war that were more unbelievable than him standing on a burning tank, shooting a 50 cal, calling down artillery on his own head.
That's
There were
crazy.
more unbelievable things than that,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
him clearing a building by himself, or charging a machine gun nest. So I like to look at history, and I like to look at events that happen, and sort of like, okay, what was this crazy thing happen? Okay, what would happen if that happened in space? What would that look like?
Oh, that's cool.
And that way everything has that verisimilitude, that feeling of authenticity while you're reading it. I make up very little. I just scavenge and borrow from just about everybody. And of course, you can only do that if you read a lot.
Yeah.
Watching movies is great, and TV shows are great, but they lack depth.
Yeah.
They're not good inspiration for novels. If you're trying to write a movie, write a screenplay. Don't write a
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
You want your inspiration to be things that you've read primarily. Also, movies are a visual medium, so it's really hard. One of the things about superheroes I always get asked is like, well, comics are a visual medium. How do you do that in the books? And I'm like, well, I don't, because it's not a visual medium. I don't linger on their costumes a whole lot because what's the point? But the best the best inspiration you can get can come from the written language, as far as I'm concerned, and you'll be a better writer for it. Obviously you've read a ton, so I'm really looking forward to your sounds like you've read and watched almost everything I've read and watched. So
Just about. Well, it was funny
good.
because I said to my wife, because we have dinner here in a little bit, and then she was like, I know you really want to interview Jeffrey. I'm like, I do, because I thought it was so funny where when I heard you on the like Lindsay Broker, Jeffrey Pools and them's and Joe's podcast, you said something that my wife says to me all the time, where like your wife was like, okay, like people only want to hear about your book for about 20 minutes at this party, and then you got to move on. And I was like, this is the guy that I want to interview, because I'm like, that's me in a nutshell. Like tonight, she's literally gonna be like, I'm timing you. You can be like 5 minutes, because that's all I want to talk about with anybody. And it's hard to. That's why I do podcasts.
That's a good sign.
It's hard to find people in this town. Like I'm in a college town, but there's this, unfortunately, with the pandemic, there hasn't been a lot of great opportunities. I tried starting up a writing club and society and a couple other things, and there were no takers before the pandemic, and it's been really hard to meet people. So
yeah, the problem I find with that sort of interaction is that you need to find people who are on the same level of commitment and skill that you are. I mean, the skill can be this or this, but the level of commitment.
I think you're right.
Success is perseverance, right? If you don't quit, you will succeed.
Yeah.
And if you get around people who are not as committed as you are, they just bring you down.
Yeah.
Or they want to tear you, or they want to tear you down.
Yeah.
Which is worse.
That's why I like to sometimes, like, I like to lone wolf it now, because like I'm like, there's nobody.
It's a lonely business.
Yeah, like there's nobody in person I can talk to.
Yeah. So my wife will always say, like, I'll be like, we'll be in a room together and we'll be completely silent. And I'm like, so Becky, and she's like, is this about your book? No. You know, it's about this other book, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But so yeah, no, it's being excited about your work is one of the primary things that you have to have. If you're not excited about it, then it's not going to show on the page, and if it doesn't show on
yeah,
the page, the reader won't feel it.
yeah,
So being excited is really important, and
yeah,
not burning out is also really important.
yeah,
um
yeah,
you know, I writing 6 books a year for 3 years kind of burned me out.
yeah, yeah. That's a
Really
lot.
rough.
Yeah.
And the money was good, but yeah, so I've slowed down considerably.
Well,
But also I've started putting a lot more depth into my novels
yeah,
than I did in my superhero stuff, so that takes more time.
yeah, yeah.
And writing military sci-fi, there's a heck of a lot more research. um and also, you know, creating the, like, I wanted like I said, I really wanted the ship to be a character, so you had to draw up a schematic of the ship and know where everything is, and you know
Yeah,
how
yeah,
long it
yeah.
takes to move here and there, things like that. So,
Yeah.
but you should check it out, April 19th, Against All Odds. I think you'll like it. I think it'll be
Oh
right
yeah,
up your
yeah.
alley.
I'm gonna go check it out as soon as
I
I
think
get
you're
back
my
together.
audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I was gonna say, like, I know my wife's probably like texting me to go. Anytime, you know, you want to come and talk about craft, or, you know, you hit me up on Facebook or any social media if you want to talk about your books. I would love to, you know, to hear different
Yeah,
things that, you know, you
feel
got
free
going
to,
on.
if you have any questions, or if
Oh, for
you
sure.
want to, you know, you've run into a particularly difficult story spot and you need some work, someone to help you workshop it, let me know.
Oh yeah, that'd be
I'm
awesome.
happy to do it.
Yeah,
I always make that offer. Nobody ever takes me up on it. So
oh, I'm definitely gonna take you up on
maybe
it.
you'll be the first.
Mark Timoney, my friend Mark Timoney, him and I became friends like through social media and like this podcast, and I interviewed him a couple of times, and we sent each other quite a few things. And Scott Odin's another one. Like I sent
Oh, it's
Scott
Scott. I
stuff.
know Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Scott. Like I'm a huge Conan fan. When I interviewed him, I was like, bow down to the Conan writer.
Love Conan. Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe that I was able to interview him. Richard Lee Byers was another one, and I've hit him up a couple times.
You know,
Everybody's
that's
been
one of the
great
great
though.
things about this job, so to speak, is getting to meet other authors. And I was
Yeah,
at a
yeah.
con last November, and I got to meet Larry Correa
Oh,
from
that's
Monster Hunter
cool.
National. He is such a cool dude. Oh my
That is
gosh.
cool. I've heard that.
He is like the kind of person you'd be like, can we just go hang out, man? Let's just
Yeah,
go
yeah.
hang out. I'll buy you a beer. Let's hang out. You know,
That's
he's just
cool.
so cool. And then I got to meet David Weber, which
Oh, that's
was
awesome.
really special.
That is super
And then
cool.
yeah, just a whole bunch of people. Yeah, it's I'm an extrovert, so my wife always says that I'm the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. You know,
It is
because like
hard. It is really hard.
yeah, I need to talk to people. I need
Yeah,
friends.
yeah. No, I
And the
totally agree.
pandemic really hurt me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, I'll let you get out of here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. You guys, your people can find me at jeffreyhaskell.com, or if you go to amazon.com, you can look up me by name, Jeffrey H. Haskell, ERY, or my books, Arsenal of the Full Metal Superhero, Wraith Superhero by Night, or Against All Odds, Book 1 of the Grimm's War, coming
And
out
of
April
course,
19th.
oh, sorry. So April 19th. So of course, my audience knows you can find all of Jeffrey's links in the description for every single place that this is. We have the rss.com, which will be fixed before this episode comes out. So you can find this there on Spotify, YouTube. You can go to our website, which is connected to everything, and find this
And,
episode there. So,
and for people who like audiobooks, all my books are audiobooks. So you
oh,
can
that's
get
good to
them
know.
anywhere audiobooks are sold.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super good to know. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much. I was telling my wife, I was like, it's going to be a really good pleasure. So I was really, really thankful that you responded, you know, on your, you know, your like page and everything on
Sorry I
Facebook.
was late.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm a teacher. Like I said, it's nice. I got to do some work, and I was kind of thinking of a problem I was having in my book. So I kind of got that going a little bit. So it's always nice just to get to talk to somebody, you know, about craft for a few. So like I said, anytime you want to come back, or you're like, I really want to talk about this and nobody wants to listen, you know, you just hit me up, and, you know, I'll have you on anytime, and I'd be more than happy to listen. So I got a lot of notes. This is probably the most I've ever had on an interview. So I'm really excited to come back after tomorrow and come back, look at them again, and kind of start some research and look at some things. I always listen to these again myself, so, and watch them, and that way I can pick out some different things. So, but it's been more than helpful. So I really appreciate your time, Jeffrey. I hope you and your family have a lovely weekend, and I hope to talk to you soon on social media, my friend.
Thank you, sir. You have a great night.
You too. Later.